Noah sat at a table, across from a man he'd never seen in his life. The man had a wide, pale face, half of it being taken up by a crooked smile with needle-like teeth. What used to be his lips were chapped and bloody, highlighting his demented grin. His eye sockets were deep and hollow, almost as if there were no eyes in there to begin with, but Noah could tell that the man had eyes, because the man was staring daggers into him. The man had a large, crooked, pig-like nose, which was a shade of light red, almost as if the man had been suffering from bad cold. An abundance of thick hairs grew out of his nostrils, nearly reaching down to his upper lip as he breathed in and out. Noah was used to seeing people who looked like this man. Ever since the catastrophe, Noah had observed several people who looked like this, people who didn't look like people anymore. They were human only in shape, and even then, there would be something off about their figure. With this man, it was his head, being almost football-like in shape, yet Noah didn't want to acknowledge the man's unsettling appearance. This was the first time he'd ever interacted with one of the victims of the catastrophe, and he did not want to get on this man's bad side. The man wore a bluish-green trilby with a yellow band. He also wore a suit and tie, which were the same colors as the hat and band respectively. His hands were clasped together. They were large and gaunt, with long, dirty fingernails. The man cracked his knuckles before separating his hands from each other and looking down at the paper on Noah's side of the table. It was a contract, and next to it was a ballpoint pen. The man said 2 words. "Sign it." The words on the contract were barely legible, and even then Noah read them after he signed the paper out of instinct. All he could make out was the phrase, "not responsible for injury or death." Even then, Noah wasn't intimidated by the phrase. He knew what he was doing. 3 revolvers sat on the table. They each sat inside a circle, each of them being crudely painted in 3 different colors, red, yellow, and blue. The man picked up the revolvers and started juggling them, an act that took Noah by surprise. The man didn't even look at the guns he was juggling. Instead, he kept looking at Noah. "These beauties don't have safety," the man said. "If I just so happen to make a wrong move, the game could end before it even starts." The man then caught the guns in one swift motion. One landed in his right hand, as 2 landed in his left hand, causing Noah to realize how unnaturally big the man's hands were. "I see now why it's called Circus Roulette," Noah replied. "Indeed." The man then gently laid the guns out on the table, 1 weapon in each circle. "How many bullets do we have?" Noah asked curiously. "1 live round, 17 blanks," the man explained. "Pick a color. I pick blue." "All right, I'm going red," Noah replied. "Red? You don't seem like the type of guy to pick red. Even then we pick different colors," the man spoke. "You know what that means." The man then grabbed the gun in the yellow circle and placed it in the middle of the table. He then spun it around, waiting in anticipation to see who would have the first turn. The gun stopped spinning, and the barrel faced neither of the men. The man let out a sigh from within his gruesome maw and spun the firearm once more, and after a moment it stopped spinning, and its barrel pointed towards Noah. "Your shot," the man spoke. Noah hesitantly grabbed the revolver with 2 shaking hands as he put the barrel in his mouth, slowly pressing the hammer down with a pale thumb. "In the mouth, huh?" the man said. "I like that." Noah's hands trembled as sweat rolled down his face. The barrel was cold and it had a bitter taste. "It seems as if you want to put on a show," the man uttered. "Putting on a show is what it's all about." Noah pulled the trigger. Noah let out a sigh of relief as the man across him made a gesture with a gnarled hand. Noah put the gun down on the table. His whole body shook as he looked at the other man, who seemed way too excited about the situation he was in. Noah slid the revolver across the table. The man caught it, and without hesitation, he aimed the barrel at one of his eye sockets, pressed the hammer down with his thumb, and pulled the trigger. The man put the gun down on the table and slid it over to Noah's end. Noah picked up the gun, squeezing the hammer as he looked at the man's grotesque face. "Who are you?" Noah asked.
"I go by a lot of names. But even then, we won't know each other for very long. So why would my name even matter to you?"
The man replied. I don't know, Noah responded, before raising the gun up to his temple with a shaking hand.
"Don't like the taste?"
the man asked him. Noah couldn't stand the taste. He didn't answer the man's question, however. He had to focus entirely on pulling the trigger. Noah pressed the hammer down before putting the gun on the table and sliding it over to the other side, breathing heavily. The man grabbed it and aimed the barrel at his other eye.
"By the way, there's something I forgot to tell you,"
the man spoke.
"Each of us gets 3 shots at the other party. Well, that is if I just so happen to have a blank in here. But I've got a good feeling about this one."
The man then pointed the gun at Noah. Noah instinctively put his hands up, causing his opponent to let out a chuckle.
"I thought you were a good man, Noah Caldwell," the man spoke. "Yet you put your hands up even when you don't need to."
At first, Noah was shocked that the man referred to him by name, but he then remembered that he signed the contract. Of course the man knew his name.
"I am a good man,"
Noah responded, slowly lowering his hands as he spoke. The man put pressure onto the hammer with a disgusting thumb.
"Liar,"
the man uttered. The man pressed the hammer down again before passing the revolver over to Noah.
"Who was it?"
the man asked.
"A cop? One of the victims? Or was it another bad man like you?"
Noah lifted the gun and aimed it at the man.
"Showing your true colors now, huh?"
the man uttered.
"Last bullet for Team Yellow."
Noah pressed the hammer down and passed the gun over to his opponent. The man grabbed the gun and bit down on the barrel, tilting the firearm upwards as he aimed for the roof of his mouth. The man pulled the gun out of his mouth and looked at it for a moment before tossing it to the side.
"You first this time,"
the man said.
"Pick a color."
"Blue."
"All right, I'm going red,"
the man returned.
"We don't have a third party this time. You know what that means."
The man then pulled a coin out of his pocket. On one side was what looked like an elephant, and on the other side was an equine of some sort.
"Heads or tails?"
the man asked. "Tails," Noah answered.
"All right, I'm choosing heads,"
the man replied. The man then tossed the coin into the air. It landed on his palm, and without looking, he flipped his hand over and smacked it down onto the table. The man lifted his hand up off of the table and looked down at the coin. He then looked up at Noah.
"Tails,"
the man rasped. The man then grabbed the gun in the blue circle, pressed the hammer down, and placed it in the middle of the table. He then spun the firearm around, an eager look on his demented face as he did so. The gun stopped spinning. The barrel now faced the grotesque man.
"Lucky me,"
the man said, staring right through Noah. The man grabbed the weapon and spun the gun's cylinder. He then lifted the weapon up to the side of his head. The man let out a deep sigh. After a moment of silence, the man squeezed the hammer again and passed the gun over to Noah. Noah grabbed the gun and aimed it at his temple, his hands shaking. The man let out a quiet laugh. Noah then pressed the hammer down and slid the gun across the table. The man grabbed the gun and aimed it at his forehead with a shaking hand. He wasn't shaking with fear, but rather with excitement. The muzzle started digging into his skin as his knuckles grew white. Despite the fact that no bullet came out of the chamber, the man's forehead started bleeding. The man slammed the gun down onto the table. His smile somehow became more deranged than it already was, as his whole body started shaking once more.
"Damn,"
the man man said.
I thought that would be the one.
Then why didn't you aim it at me? Noah asked. The man stopped shaking, and for the first time, he frowned. It was exaggerated like that of a cartoon character, yet it was extremely unsettling. The man squeezed the hammer and passed the weapon over to Noah as his frown grew into a smile once more. Noah, who was now used to aiming a gun at his own head, pressed the muzzle against his temple and pulled the trigger. He pressed the hammer down and passed the gun over to his opponent. The man aimed the gun at Noah with a shaking hand. He then frowned again.
No,
The man said.
I can't waste them.
The man then pressed the muzzle against his forehead once more, his deranged smile returning as he did so. Some more blood leaked out of the man's forehead as he pressed the hammer down and passed the gun over to Noah. Noah squeezed the hammer and aimed the gun at the man.
Last bullet for Team Blue.
The man spoke.
This game's longer than usual.
The man continued.
I like that.
Second round usually does it, huh? Noah asked before tossing the gun off to the side. The man nodded his head as he grabbed the gun in the red circle, squeezed the hammer, and placed it in the center of the table.
Let's make this interesting.
The man said.
How about you spin it around this time?
Noah spun the weapon around. After a moment, it stopped. The barrel faced the grotesque man once more.
Twice in a row, huh?
The man remarked. The man then grabbed the gun and aimed it at his forehead a third time in the same spot, further digging the muzzle into his skin. The man pressed the hammer down again. He then passed the gun over to Noah.
It really is unfair, isn't it?
The man rasped.
Everyone thinks we're crazy. Everyone thinks we're just madmen who cause chaos for the sake of causing chaos. Can't these people see that we do this for a reason?
Noah grabbed the gun and aimed it at the man, who was still smiling. Yet Noah could tell that the man was livid. Yeah, it is unfair, Noah replied. Noah pressed his thumb down onto the hammer before passing the gun over to his opponent. Ever since that bastard took over, our country's gone to shit, Noah continued.
Yeah. We're gonna change things, though.
The man responded. The man pressed the gun against his forehead, digging it into his wound with a shaking hand. The entire muzzle was now submerged in the man's head.
Wait. No,
the man said. What is it? The man just sat and stared at Noah, slowly pulling the weapon's muzzle out of his head, now soaked in blood. He aimed the gun at Noah as blood spurted from his wound. Noah could now see what appeared to be bone as he looked at the man's injury. Then he looked the man in the eyes.
I've got a feeling that this is the one.
The man spoke.